Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
New on Curiosity Stream. How do you connect a 16th century potato to limitless energy production? Could Napoleon's toothpick have a direct link to a machine that predicts the future? And how can a 1700s conch shell chart a course to humans connecting their brains to the internet? James Burke's visionary series Connections returns for a new generation. Experience all new Connections. With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Hello there, girls, gays, and everybody else who finds themselves here today. It is me, your girl, Elena Grace, and you're listening to another episode of I've Been Thinking. So thanks. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for perhaps listening for the first time. Yeah, I love you guys. Even if I don't know you, I love you. Remember that. Write it down. Put that in your wallet and take it out on a rainy day. I love you. You're worthy. Happy Friday affirmations. Anyway, I am over-caffeinated and slowly coming down from it. It is 10:51 p.m. I'm still not actually tired. I am moving this week. Actually, tomorrow, if you're listening to this on Friday, December 10th, as you should be because that's the day it comes out, Adam and I are moving to Destin, Florida. So we are so excited. This is such an incredible opportunity for us, and we're just thrilled. But Adam has gone down ahead of me, and that means that I am here finishing packing and cleaning the house and everything. And this is not my forte. This is too much organization for me. This is too much structure for me, frankly, because I have to get a certain amount of things done in a certain amount of time, and I can't just wing it. Because Adam told me that if he comes back on Friday night and finds one thing not packed up, it gets thrown away. And, you know, that's really funny. But he's also very serious about it. Ask Allison and Taylor. They were here when he said it. And I don't blame him because he knows me. And he knows my propensity for procrastination, and for just being a hot mess in general. But I am like stressed out. I'm not stressed out about that. I'm just stressed out about the move in general and having everything together and RTG ready to go on Saturday morning to load it into a U-Haul and then drive 11 hours straight through. It's just a lot. It's a lot. So, anyway, that's me unpacking, unloading on you guys this Friday. How are you? How are you doing? I hope you're well. More than anything, I hope you're well. So, today I am excited. I am telling you a little bit. We're going in a few different directions, okay? But I'm bringing you an on this day in history kind of inspired situation, okay? So, on this day, December 10th, 1996, the South African president Nelson Mandela signed a new constitution into effect, which completed the transition from South Africa as an apartheid state into a democracy. Now, this is like a huge deal, okay? Like, huge, like so big, like Dolly Parton's hair, huge deal. And I wanted to tell you all about this mostly because I have always found Nelson Mandela a really intriguing figure, okay? And one of the things that has always very much intrigued me about him is that for a lot of people, he is very controversial. But also for a lot of people, he is a hero. And like, that's not that weird, but I could never figure out what was controversial about him, okay? And, I mean, for my part, I also never asked. But I remember people when I was growing up really didn't care for him, and I could never figure out why these people who were intelligent and good and all of these things really disliked this guy that also a lot of other intelligent and good people seem to love and look up to and laud as like a great politician and a great leader and orator and as somebody who did really important things. So I could never figure it out. So I thought, why not? I looked up, what happened this day in history, found this, and I was like, this is perfect. I am going to figure out why Nelson Mandela was controversial for people, and I'm going to tell you guys about him, okay? So, first though, I want to explain to y'all what an apartheid state is, just in case you don't know, which is totally fine. I'm a political science major and I still had to, I knew what it meant, but I had to Google the definition, and I'm actually glad I did because I learned something. So, apartheid is literally an Afrikaans word that means apartness. This is literally, South Africa is where the idea originated. By the way, Afrikaans is the overall language of South Africa. That's super oversimplifying it, but Afrikaans is the overall, quote unquote, native language of South Africa. Okay. So, South Africa is literally where apartheid came from. So, apartheid is a social policy / political structure, if you will, which governed relations between South Africa's white minority who ruled South Africa. So the white minority was the ruling class of South Africa, and the non-white majority was not. They were not in power at all. So the apartheid state allowed for officially sanctioned racial segregation as well as political and economic discrimination against non-whites, aka people of color. So I do want to talk for a second about how, some of the things that brought the apartheid state to an end. So, and they all involved Nelson Mandela. Okay, so I think that is obviously he's the common string here throughout this episode. So the administration of the South African president F.W. de Klerk actually saw the repeal of the legislation that supported apartheid, which at this point in 1993, a new constitution was adopted within the country that repealed the apartheid state. Okay, so that was in 1993. The next year, in 1994, national elections were open to people of all races. Like, that's how bad it was. And Nelson Mandela won, becoming the leader of a black majority government, which is super important to talk about because as a democracy now, South Africa, being a majority, non-white, people of color, black country, it would make sense for it to be represented by a majority of black people, a majority of non-white people, because that is what a representative democracy is. Now, I do want to note, again, because I think it gets lost a little bit, and this is not me taking away from Mandela's contributions at all, but President F.W. de Klerk is officially credited with bringing the apartheid segregation to an end because it came to fruition under his administration, as well as making the transition to true democracy, aka majority rule, with the assistance of our man Nelson Mandela. And then, obviously, Mandela came into power after de Klerk's administration. So, de Klerk and Mandela actually share the 1993 Nobel Prize for Peace for their collaborations to destroy the racial segregation of South Africa, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't know that he shared that with anybody. I thought it was like all him. So I think it's super interesting and also super awesome that the two of them were honored together for their collaborations to dismantle this oppressive social and political state. So, why would a man who dismantled segregation and institutionalized racism, which this is not to say that racism and segregation don't still remain prevalent or visible at all in South African culture and policies, etc. Like, they are still working today, obviously, to overcome those things. But it is, thankfully, at least policy-wise, from what I know, from what I can find, much, much better than it was before. So we're thankful for that. But like I said, still working to overcome that all the time. You know, that is not the kind of thing that just like flip a switch, it's done overnight, which sucks. I wish it was. But so why did somebody who did all of these cool, impressive, like important things, why was he considered controversial by so many people? First, he was briefly a member of the Communist Party, and his organization, like his political party organization, the African National Congress, was closely allied to the South African Communist Party. And so I think that, actually I know that the association of him to communists/communism, especially because at this point in time, the United States was still viewing him through the contextual lens of the Cold War anti-communist, we hate anything the color red except for the stripes on our flag era. In combination with some associations with violence that he had picked up, because he actually has a huge history of speaking out against violence, of being very anti-violence, very much a pacifist, all of the above. But he did launch a largely ineffective armed struggle to try to sabotage the apartheid. He was a part of that. He was a leader of that. And so because of that, a lot of people actually attached the term terrorist to him, because he's all of a sudden going from peaceful to let's bother the racists and create some problems to try to get people to understand, to try to get attention for our cause. That's a very normal thing. Like I said, it was largely ineffective, but it was bothersome, and it was enough to get people's attention. But he was labeled by many a terrorist for these efforts. So his associations with communism, in combination with the label of terrorist and association with violence by a lot of people, it really damned his perception in the United States. Plus, there's the fact that the United States actually very much officially supported the apartheid regime. Tell me if you're surprised. I wasn't. I was not surprised by that. First of all, the apartheid regime was also anti-communist, and being like Cold War vibes, this was super important to the U.S. Plus, the economic people, the finance bros, they really didn't want to impose sanctions or cut off trade between the two countries because they feared economic repercussions. And then, finally, President Ronald Reagan actually vetoed a bill. God bless America. President Ronald Reagan actually vetoed a bill to impose sanctions on South Africa for the apartheid. And not only did he do that, he actually addressed the public and begged them. He was like, we don't want this. We don't want to impose sanctions on them for their racism, institutional racism, and official segregation. We don't want to do that. We want to continue allowing people to live oppressed. Because why wouldn't the United States want people to continue living an oppressed life if it meant that their life didn't have to change at all one single iota? Surprise. Are we surprised? Shake your head, yes or no. Yeah, that's what I thought. None of y'all are surprised. So, it has always, like I said, just been super interesting to me how the majority of people today, I feel, tend to see Nelson Mandela as heroic, as a trailblazer, as just all of these things, all of these wonderful adjectives. He became the president of South Africa. He unified a divided country. He overthrew an apartheid, and he existed in this really interesting back and forth dichotomy of peacemaker and freedom fighter, and capitalist and nationalist, communist and non-communist. Literally all of the above. He could really play both sides, I think, in the best way. In the truest, best sense, it seems. And I think that this is something that does bother a lot of people. A lot of people makes them feel like he was fake, he was this, he wasn't true to himself or true to his beliefs or whatever. But if you ask me, this makes for quite an impressive politician and leader, because unlike what we so often see today here in the U.S., you have to be able to bend. You have to be a friend to all. You have to be able to reach across party lines to say, you know what? I don't agree with them on this. I don't agree with the person standing next to me normally on this. I'm going to agree with you. And we can all work together, though. We can all figure it out together. We don't have to have a fist fight. We can sing Kumbaya, you know? And I think that that is what's most important. I think that he did that beautifully, because you have to be able to change and to evolve and to do all these things and play different roles in order to have and to create long-lasting success and long-lasting effects. So that is my thought on Nelson Mandela. I get, like, contextually, I get why people maybe didn't love him. And also I get why people think about him, maybe even now. And yeah, nobody's perfect. We're all human. I'm not saying he was perfect by any means. But I get why people, even who maybe weren't alive at that point, or who weren't old enough at the point that he was doing all of these things to really make the best decisions, but I get why they still believe that, because they are being raised by Cold War era adults, and they're still in the social context of post-Cold War politics, because I mean, it still has an effect on us today, hell, 60 years later. So imagine in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s, like the way it would affect you, the context of society, how you perceive things, how you perceive international politics. Huge, huge, huge. That 70s show. There we go. That 70s show. So, I want to tie us in, though, okay? We're going out with a bang. We're going to talk about the Mandela Effect, because it is named after him, after all. So, if you don't know about it, most people at this point know about the Mandela Effect, but it's a situation wherein a person or a group of people, in my experience, it's typically a good-sized group of people, have a shared false memory. So the term was actually coined, and this is why it's named after Nelson Mandela, when a woman named Fiona Broome created a website dedicated to her memories of President Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, before he was even president, when in reality he actually did a ton more stuff after he left jail, and he, became president of South Africa, and he signed the Constitution. He signed the Constitution and officially ended apartheid on this day in 1996. All of the above. He did a lot of things. And then he died in 2013. So why does she remember him dying in prison? Well, here's the thing. There's actually quite a community of people who remembers vividly Nelson Mandela passing away in prison, and international news coverage of this in the 80s. And the thing is, they're all almost identical memories. And that's what makes it so weird. So, Broome, the creator, the originator of the theory, she goes on to call this an event that never occurred in this reality, which is really important, okay? Because this brings up one of the most popular explanations for the phenomenon, just because of its mindfuckness, and that is the concept of alternate realities. So, the idea of alternate realities stems from quantum physics and string theory, which is a theoretical framework which explains the universe and reality in terms of strings. Have you seen Interstellar, the strings? And those strings vibrate in 10 dimensions, which isn't something that we can really easily conceive of at all. And that is one of the reasons why Interstellar makes my stomach hurt. So as much as I love my boy Matthew McConaughey, it is not one I can watch very much because it makes me want to throw up. So within string theory, our universe is one of potentially infinite universes. So Rick and Morty, right there. Infinite Ricks, infinite Mortys, infinite universes, Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty. Known as the multiverse. So literally Spider-Man also. So basically, this ties into the Mandela Effect in that theoretically, people or memories could accidentally cross over in between throughout dimensions or timelines on accident, thus bringing their memories of a timeline wherein something different happened to this timeline. So the Berenstein Bears versus the Berenstain Bears. What's another big one? There's a lot of movie-based ones, like everybody remembers the iconic line, "Luke, I am your father," from Star Wars. Well, that's not actually the line. It's, "No, I am your father." Lines from Casablanca, Forrest Gump. I mean, truly you can go on, and frankly, I highly recommend you go Google it, watch some YouTube videos. It's wild. It is fascinating. It's upsetting, like beyond upsetting, honestly. The Fruit Loops logo, the way it's spelled, I mean, all of it. There's so many different directions you can go in, and all of them will leave you confused. So, yeah, that is the story of why Nelson Mandela is a controversial figure, and also of what the Mandela Effect is. They are not at all related, other than the fact that this episode was Nelson Mandela themed. Well, I guess they are related, actually, if you think about it slightly more critically than I am right now in my overcaffeinated state, which is funny because the whole theme of the podcast is critical thought, right? And like learning things and blah, 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 that kind of thing. So it's funny that the Mandela Effect is like, it originated with this memory of him dying in the 80s in prison, when he was in prison for being a political activist / freedom fighter, and like doing that ineffective armed, technically kind of insurgency, to try to dismantle the apartheid state. So he was in jail for that. People remember him dying. So those people who remember him dying, they are whether they truly were or not, their reality was a timeline wherein Nelson Mandela didn't achieve a lot of the important things that he did in our reality go on to achieve. And I think that's really interesting that the Mandela Effect is this alternate version of reality, and whether it is a true interdimensional crossover, wrong timeline, et cetera, situation or not, like, our reality is all we have, like the reality of our own little bubble. That is all we truly have of reality, okay? And those people who remember him dying in prison in the 80s, in their reality, he never did those things. So technically, in their reality, it could have remained an apartheid state in spite of the previous administration's efforts to create a place where people of color were allowed to be whoever they want to be and do what they want to be and go where they want to go, where it was desegregated. So Nelson Mandela, in their reality, never got to be a true part of that. So technically, it could still be an apartheid state. I mean, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on. I really could spiral on this. And in fact, I think I already am spiraling on it. But it's just so interesting to me how our reality truly is all we have. And it's hard to realize that there's more than just our reality. Like, there are other consciousnesses out there, but at the same time, we're all part of one consciousness. Ooh, guys, I'm not even drunk. I'm just here vibing, doing this to you. I'm sorry. Anyway, so yeah, Nelson Mandela and the Mandela Effect are intrinsically linked, aside from just their name, because had that version of reality that is remembered by some with the Mandela Effect been true, Nelson Mandela would have never been a household name. That's the point I was trying to get to. And I was like, my brain was going over, like 2 streets over and halfway down the block. Okay. But that was my point, was if the Mandela Effect had been true, Nelson Mandela never would have been a name that we would even think to assign. So interesting, guys. Anyway, before I do that again, I'm on dip. So make sure you guys go check out the Patreon. I didn't remind you at the beginning of the episode, but again, if you are able to, definitely think about joining the Patreon. You get tons of extra content, early content always, yada, 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 all kinds of cool stuff. And you also are able to, this month, for the month of December, you're able to put that money that you like, that $5, $3, whatever it is. Anyway, it is all being donated to Appalachian Charities. If you want to know more about that, go on the blog, www.I'veBeenThinkingPod.com/blog. There will also be notes and transcript sources, all that kind of stuff for today's episode there. But go check the blog out. I post stuff on that all the time, at least twice a week. So keep up with the blog. Keep up with the Campbells. And follow us on Instagram at I've Been Thinking Pod, and on Twitter at Ben, BEEN, Thinking Pod, at Ben Thinking Pod. So it's the podcast name without the I've. I've been trying to be more active on there, so hope you guys like it. Okay. I love you guys so stinking much. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for being my motivation. Bye, guys. I'll talk at you next week.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist, and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
You probably know the feeling. Sweaty, fast breathing, quick heart rate. That's a cortisol spike. It feels awful, and its imbalance is the cause of your anxiety. Rebalance Health's 3-part anxiety system helps address it at the root. Rebalance Health lozenges are natural and designed for optimal absorption, providing 24-hour relief. Live life fully without feeling like you're fighting for it. Get 50% off your first month with code CALM23 at rebalancehealth.com.